Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have some absolutely huge spoilers from Organic Dinosaur. Big shout out to her on Twitter. She basically tweeted out what we should be expecting in the next chapter of the Boruto manga. Now, obviously, the big thing is going to be this right here, down here. Code versus Kawaki is going to be 60% of the chapter. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about what happens before that, obviously go in chronological order, things like that. So at first it says 30% of the chapter is going to be Naruto / Kage Bunshin Boruto / Household Observer dude. Basically, it's going to be Boruto understanding that Kawaki is gone. Naruto is probably going to be completely confused, and Boruto is probably going to be still trying to make sense of everything. The next 10% is going to be Amado, Ino, and Shikamaru. No one really cares about that. Respectfully, I'm pretty sure they do have some interesting things about that. But the last one, Code versus Kawaki, 60%. Organic Dinosaur also goes on to say, basically the second half of the chapter was dedicated to just their taijutsu battle. It wasn't dialogue dense either, so it only took roughly 7 minutes to read. This right here is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, I think the big one is going to be Code versus Kawaki is supposed to be a complete wash. We understand that Code, in theory, is supposed to be very, very strong. So him essentially rivaling Kawaki either means that Kawaki got like a taijutsu boost, or Code is just not as strong as we thought, or it's just more, which is I think more realistic, Code isn't 100% going all out against Kawaki Minimum because he understands that he's probably not necessarily trying to fully kill Kawaki. The only confusing part about this is the fact that Organic Dinosaur did actually say that there wasn't really any dialogue, or it wasn't dialogue dense either. I think there should be dialogue, and the Boruto writer should actually make it very clear that Code is actually holding back versus Kawaki, because if this is not the case, then it would obviously mean that a character like, say, Naruto, or a character like Sasuke would easily be able to defeat Code if they do figure out his abilities. One thing that we do understand right now is that Code's abilities right now are possibly, and well, much likely, what makes Code as strong as he is. Taijutsu in itself could possibly be equal to Kawaki, even though I personally believe that's not necessarily going to be the case. Code's abilities is probably what takes him over the top of him actually being stronger than a character like Delta, because obviously Taijutsu wise, Delta would probably wash Kawaki in probably like 2-3 seconds or something like that. Alright, just like what I was talking about, Organic Dinosaur clears up that original tweet by tweeting something else. Specifically, she tweets out, "You guys might want to manage your expectations. Code dominated Kawaki and spent most of his time taunting / simply beating him up. He easily dodged Kawaki's hand energy blast. Boruto suddenly appeared, plus intervened and broke Code's chokehold over Kawaki at the final 2 pages. Why Organic Dinosaur didn't tweet this in the last tweet, or even include this directly after that last tweet, I have absolutely no idea, but this provides a lot more information, also gives us a whole nother dynamic to the chapter that we didn't necessarily get to see in the last tweet. One of the big things obviously is going to be the fact that Boruto suddenly appeared, plus intervened and broke Code's chokehold over Kawaki at the final 2 pages. Boruto is now in the battle. My personal opinion is that Boruto plus Kawaki is probably not necessarily going to be good enough to beat a character like Code. If Sada and Mitsuki were there, I think it'd be a little bit more interesting, even though I think that Code would still be able to take them. But I think that this right here still looks like a complete body bag. Now, another interesting aspect of this chapter that we do have to keep our eyes on is Sasuke. One of the things that we did see in the last chapter is the fact that Sasuke was basically lurking around Code's claw marks around the Hidden Leaf Village. Sasuke is looking for Code. One of the things that I did point out in one of my preview videos about this specific chapter right here is that I said that I wouldn't necessarily be too surprised if Sasuke would actually pull up to the fight versus Code and Kawaki and actually intervene and actually help Kawaki. This is the same thing that I'm possibly going to expect in the next chapter, not necessarily chapter 62, but chapter 63. If there is a certain situation where Boruto and Kawaki are on the downside, they're losing to Code, it wouldn't be surprising at all for Sasuke to pull up and actually beat Code alongside Boruto and Kawaki. Now, if you guys were to ask me, would Kawaki plus Boruto plus Sasuke be able to beat Code? I personally think yes. It's not necessarily just going to be Code's power versus the power of those 3 people. It's going to be Code versus 3 very skilled ninjas. And one of the bright spots about Naruto is the fact that it's not necessarily just power versus power. It's power versus power, planning, tactics, and a bunch of stuff like that. And Sasuke is arguably the most smartest ninja right now at the Hidden Leaf Village. Obviously, Shikamaru has something to say about that, and some other characters like Kabuto or Orochimaru, but that's besides the point. Sasuke is extremely smart, and we already have on record that Code isn't necessarily the smartest. So a team of Boruto plus Kawaki and Sasuke would possibly be good enough to beat Code. Now, another thing that I was obviously questioning early on was the fact that Kawaki and Code were actually fighting for over half of the chapter. This right here is very confusing mainly because that right there made it seem that Kawaki and Code were swapping hands, like they were actually equal, and that Code just taijutsu wise wasn't necessarily able to take down Kawaki. I thought that was absolutely astonishing, but Organic Dinosaur cleared that up in this actual tweet right here when she said Code dominated Kawaki and spent most of the time taunting / simply beating him up. This right here makes a bunch of sense. If you guys don't necessarily recall, back in the previous chapters, it was made very clear that Code was actually jealous of Kawaki mainly because he was actually the complete vessel for Isshiki Otsutsuki, someone that Code actually idolized. So him actually just taunting Kawaki, beating him up like this, basically doing everything that he wanted to do to Kawaki while Isshiki Otsutsuki was around, now it really makes a lot of sense. But before I expand on that, Organic Dinosaur did actually tweet out some other things pertaining to chapter 62 specifically. It says the title is going to be a chance encounter, and also Organic Dinosaur goes on to say the colored cover features Code utilizing his transformed hands through his claw mark grid. The splash text is written hide and seek. One thing that we should be looking out for in this specific episode right here, what specifically is this power boost that Kawaki is actively searching for? As of right now, we have absolutely no idea. And not only us, one of the things that was made absolutely clear in chapter 61 is that no one else has any idea of exactly what Kawaki is trying to do. Now here's the thing, I personally believe Boruto somehow makes it clear to Amato that Kawaki did actually leave and is trying to look for some sort of power boost. Amato may actually know exactly what it is, but at this particular time, specifically in this chapter, it doesn't necessarily look like that right there is going to happen, mainly because it says it only in 10% of this chapter Amato is going to be in a scene with Ino and Shikamaru. Now obviously we understand Amato and Shikamaru's relationship is extremely shaky, and obviously Ino doesn't necessarily have any sort of connection or information about Kawaki, Boruto, or even Code in the Kado organization. So at this particular point, my hope for Amato gaining any sort of knowledge about Kawaki's well-being, Kawaki's motives, Kawaki's mental state is at an all-time low as of right now. But one thing that I do want to say is that Amato definitely does have some very interesting storylines in this specific chapter right here. One of the things that we didn't necessarily get to see in chapter 61 is the quote-unquote brand new cyborg that Amato did actually make for the Hidden Leaf Village that we did see in chapter 60. Now my personal opinion, because it's only 10% of this chapter right here, which is what Organic Dinosaur did actually say, I don't necessarily expect to see the cyborg in this specific chapter right here, but I would be remiss if I didn't necessarily mention that there is definitely a possibility that we do actually get to see it. Because Amato is in the Hidden Leaf sweatshop, because we understand that Amato lives into the laboratory 24/7, it wouldn't necessarily be a complete stretch that Ino and Shikamaru meets Amato in a sort of laboratory while he's kind of working on this cyborg, which me personally, I hope that's going to be the case. I 100% am super excited to see exactly what Amato is working on. Now not only that, another big topic in this episode is going to be Naruto. Is Naruto going to find out about what Kawaki is up to? Is Boruto actually going to tell Naruto what's going on, or is Boruto just going to let it ride? I personally believe the smart idea is to tell Naruto. We understand that Kawaki is not necessarily going to be revolting against the Hidden Leaf Village or anything like that, but I personally believe that Naruto can definitely help Kawaki achieve what he wants to achieve, assuming Kawaki doesn't necessarily get abducted by Code or anything like that. But regardless, this chapter right here seems to be an absolute banger of a chapter, just because of the sheer fact that we do see Code going up against Kawaki for over half of this chapter. This right here is going to be something very special. But let me know what you guys think about this chapter in the comment section below. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, I definitely cannot wait until this chapter drops. Specifically, I believe it drops in about 4 days. But it's me, your boy Barbie, and we out.
It's a knife.